UbD, or Understanding by Design, is a method of standards-based lesson planning. See if you can figure out why it's called backward design. This is how most teachers plan a typical unit. They start with some sort of topic, usually taken from the teacher's manual of the adopted textbook. Then they consider several activities that they think will help the students learn about the topic. And then they come up with several assessments so they can have some grades in their grade book. But take a closer look at this unit plan. What are the kids really learning? What will they say when they get home and their parents ask, "So what is pioneer life like?" I can hear it now. "It was fun." Really? Was pioneer life fun? Is that the big takeaway you want kids to get from this unit? Now let's take a look at that same unit planned with UbD, Standards-Based Planning. First, you start with the standard. The essential understandings are for you, the teacher. This is what you must understand, even if that means doing a little research on your own, and these are the things that you want your students to understand. The essential questions are questions you use to spark discussion. They may be used to establish some common context of what your children already know, and then they can be used as written assignments for assessment later on. You have to determine what your students need to know. In this example, it states, "Key facts about the westward movement." You should actually list the specific facts you want your students to know. You can find these on the SOL test blueprints, by the way. And finally, what is it your students are going to have to do? Step 2 is to determine how you're going to assess the students. You'll want to have multiple assessments in your gradebook, not just to fulfill some sort of requirement for the administration, but because you know that having multiple assessments gives a more broad picture of what your students actually know. Notice one of the assessments is a test on the facts of westward expansion, life on the prairie, and basic geography. This is a good opportunity to use those SOL test blueprints and give your students some experience on SOL testing and test-taking strategies. Things like oral presentation or written response to one of the essential questions will need a rubric and should have several drafts turned in and feedback given so that the final product is good quality. This would be formative assessment. Finally, you can determine what sorts of activities will help you get from what you want your students to know to actually performing on the assessments. You probably figured out by now that this is not a one-day, 40-minute lesson plan. This is a unit plan. Units take place over time. They can be anywhere from a few days to a week to multiple weeks to a whole year. For example, in kindergarten, you may have a whole year-long unit on community helpers. It doesn't mean you work on it every day for a year. It could be spread out differently. You, as the instructor, have the academic freedom to determine how you're going to teach. The standards tell you what you're going to teach. Here is another example of a typical 10th grade geometry unit. Read through it and the next few slides to see how much more effective the unit is when converted to backward design. Notice things like what learning styles are targeted: linguistic, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. A good lesson will have a mix. Notice things like where on Bloom's taxonomy the teacher is expecting her students to work. Something like knowing basic math facts and formulas may be lower on Bloom's taxonomy, but that doesn't mean it's not good or not important. But there should also be opportunities for the students to work at a higher level of Bloom's taxonomy, thinking critically to analyze, evaluate, and create. This is the Understanding by Design backward style unit plan. The first step is determining the desired results, and that comes straight from the SOL. Take some time to read through it. Step 2 of Understanding by Design, is determining what evidence you'll need, what assessments that you'll need to determine whether or not the students have mastered the skill. And step 3 is the learning plan, the actual learning activities that will take you from the SOL standard to the students actually being able to perform the SOL standard. Think of lesson planning with UbD in terms of taking a trip. First, you have to know where you want to go. According to our map, we're in Virginia, and we want to go to California. In the world of education, knowing where you want to go is easy. It's the SOLs. The second step is determining how you know you'll reach your destination. On our road trip, it might be when we see the Golden Gate Bridge or maybe the Hollywood sign. In the world of education, that's assessment. Success on the standards is how we'll know we achieved our goal. And it's not just passing the SOL test in May, but throughout the academic year on a variety of assessments. Then and only then can you take the third step and determine how you're going to get there. On our map, that's the black line. It's a pretty straight path. If you start where you are now and then just start driving with no map or GPS, it's like doing a bunch of so-called educational activities, and who knows whether those activities will take you to your final destination or not. That's traditional lesson planning, and that's the orange line. That's the standards-based education planning process. Let's give it a try.